Hello everybody, this is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and we're back with another of our 5-minute Histories videos here in Seton Hill. If you don't know where Seton Hill is, it is this wonderful neighborhood, a little slice of Victorian America, just north of Lexington Market, just east of Utah Street, and then bounded really in the north by Druid Hill Avenue. So that's where we are. Let me start by reading a quote from a friend of mine, Betsy Nix, a local historian. She wrote about Seton Hill several years ago that it is a microcosm of 200 years of Baltimore history of religious tolerance, institutional innovation, and urban renewal. And I agree, and I'll add one more. It's a microcosm of wonderful home renovations, including one that won one of Baltimore Heritage's preservation awards this year, and we'll get to that. But let's start in 1791, and that's when St. Mary's Seminary was founded. It is the oldest seminary, Roman Catholic seminary in the country, and it soon became a magnet for people from all over. Just 2 years later, in 1793, 53 boats arrived from Haiti, carrying refugees from the Haitian Revolution. A number of those were French Haitian, and a number of those were Roman Catholics, and many settled here in Seton Hill. And in fact, in the 1790s, early 1800s, if you arrived in Baltimore and asked, where is the French Quarter? People would have pointed you over in this direction for sure. So the 1790s, Seton Hill gets going, and for a relatively small community, it has an outsized impact on Baltimore and indeed America. America's first native-born saint made her start here. Elizabeth Ann Seton turned from a New York socialite into a school reformer here in Baltimore. She practiced her teachings at St. Mary's Seminary in the basement, started a school before moving out to Emmitsburg and expanding on that. Speaking of sainthood, Mary Lange, Mother Mary Lange, who is not a saint yet, but she is on her way. She started down that path. She got her start here founding the Oblate Sisters order, the first order for women of African descent. So let's hope she speedily goes down that path. And then architecture-wise, the first neo-Gothic piece of architecture in the country was built here, the St. Mary's Chapel, designed by Maximilian Godefroy. We know his work. He's the architect of the Battle Monument on Calvert Street and the first Unitarian church on Charles and Franklin Streets. Even in education, Johns Hopkins University got its start just around the corner in 1876 on buildings on Howard and Utah Streets. And even the esteemed City College, where my daughter is a real sophomore but taking virtual classes right now, it got one of its early starts here in a building that's now called Chesapeake Commons and is apartments. So things are going well. By the 1900s, Seton Hill is a magnet for Baltimore's African-American elites, doctors, lawyers, and the like. And in fact, let me read you a quote from Booker T. Washington. In 1909, he says, "So far as I know, there is no city in the United States," and he's talking about Druid Hill Avenue here, "where the colored population owns so many comfortable and attractive homes in proportion to the population as in Baltimore City." So doing really well. But it also has Seton Hill has its fair share of squalid houses. By as late as the 1930s, several hundred houses still don't have running water or plumbing. They use wells in their backyard and a communal cesspool. So things are going along okay and then not okay until the 1950s and 60s, when Baltimore City decides to use Seton Hill as its experiment place for urban renewal. On the north, the city demolishes several blocks of historic houses to create State Center with its sea of parking lots, surface parking lots. Right nearby, the city creates Murphy Homes, demolishing more historic houses for high-rise public housing, a mode of housing that eventually everybody concedes does not work. In the 1990s, those high-rises were imploded. And then in 1982, I believe, the city consolidates Fremont Avenue and several small residential streets into the Harbor City Boulevard, I believe it is, that then a year later gets renamed Martin Luther King Boulevard. So one final sort of sad chapter in Seton Hill before the pendulum swings the other way, and that's what's happened to St. Mary's Seminary itself. By the 1920s, the seminary, the order is trying to sell the seminary. The city almost buys it for a colored high school, but decides not to. There was a pitch to turn it into a baseball stadium, but that doesn't work. And the seminary folks eventually start moving up to the new building on Northern Parkway on Charles Street. So by 1969, there are no longer any seminarians being trained here. In the 1970s, the city buys the building. And let me read to you what the city's housing commissioner says at the time. He says about the building, it's solidly built, but that's about all you can say. And then he goes on to call it a monster. I will humbly disagree in all respects with that. So the city tears the building down, and I guess maybe the tiny silver lining is that St. Mary's Park is there now, and it is a very nice park. But personally, I wish we could turn back the hands of time and get that building back. All right, but not to end on a down note, because in the 70s and 80s, the Baltimore Sun is writing about home restoration work that's going on here by black families and white families. And there is continuing to be home restoration work done today, including, and I'm going to get the address right, 421 George Street. Matthew and Megan Strott just won a Baltimore Heritage Award for the great work they did. The work included fixing the outside of the house. The front bricks were bowing outward, maybe in danger of falling literally onto George Street. So they fixed that. On the inside, they restored original floors and plaster and stairways and did just a wonderful job. So congratulations, Mr. and Mr. Strott, and thank you very much for making Seton Hill an even more charming place, maybe a little bit of a throwback to Victorian Baltimore, but definitely one that's alive with activity. So thanks so much, and we will see you next time.